What if you arrived in a town where strangers already knew everything about you? The thought hit me like a bad joke when I first rolled into Harrowick. Except it wasn't a joke. It was the beginning of something I still can't fully explain. My car broke down about 3 miles out. The engine coughed, shuddered, then died in the middle of the empty road. Cell service was dead, too. I popped the hood, stared at the mess of metal, but I know as much about engines as I do about brain surgery. That's when I saw the sign in the distance. Harrowick, population unknown. The words were carved into rotting wood, letters peeling as though the paint itself was trying to escape. I decided to walk. The town revealed itself slowly, a cluster of old houses with peeling white paint, sagging porches, and windows that reflected the sky a little too sharply. It was quiet. Too quiet. No cars, no chatter, just the hollow echo of my footsteps on cracked pavement. Then I heard it. "Ethan." The voice came from a woman sweeping her porch. She waved at me with a smile too wide, too familiar. I froze. How do you know my name?" I asked. She laughed, brushing a strand of gray hair from her face. "Oh, Ethan, don't be silly. Everyone knows you around here." My stomach tightened. I'd never seen her before in my life. I kept walking, trying to shake it off. Maybe she mistook me for someone else. Small towns do that. People assume. But it didn't stop there. A man at the corner store leaned out the door. "Morning, Ethan. Still driving that old Toyota, huh?" My heart skipped. My car was a Toyota. He even described the dent in the back bumper, something that happened 3 months ago in a grocery store parking lot, 2 states away. I forced a laugh. "Right. Yeah. Guess word gets around." But inside, I was trembling. The diner was the only place that looked alive. The neon sign buzzed weakly, "Millie's Eats," and I went inside just to gather myself. The bell jingled above the door, and the smell of coffee and frying bacon wrapped around me. A dozen heads turned at once. "Ethan." Every single person in the diner said my name. A waitress in her mid-30s walked up, pad in hand, beaming. "Your usual." My throat went dry. "My usual?" She nodded, scribbling without waiting for an answer. "Bacon, eggs, over easy, hash browns, black coffee." Right? That was my usual. Exactly how I ordered it every morning at the diner near my apartment back home. I sat down slowly. My hands were sweating. She brought the plate within minutes, steaming, perfect. I stared at the food, then at her. "Have we met before?" Her smile didn't falter. "Ethan, stop joking around. You're home." Home. The word echoed in my head. I tried to eat, but every bite tasted like ash. My eyes scanned the diner. People weren't just looking at me, they were watching, like I was part of some play they'd all rehearsed for. I pushed away the plate and stood. "Thanks, but I should get going." The waitress touched my arm. Her fingers were cold. "Oh, Ethan, where would you go?" I pulled away and walked outside, heart pounding. The streets looked different than when I'd arrived. Shops I hadn't noticed before lined the road. A barber pole spun slowly, even though the shop was closed. A florist displayed bouquets that looked too fresh, petals glistening as if dew had just formed. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A bulletin board by the post office. Flyers, notices, and in the center, a photograph of me. It was a candid shot. I was at a gas station weeks ago, sipping coffee, scrolling my phone. Above it, bold letters read, "Welcome back, Ethan." I staggered back, breath ragged. What the hell is this? A little girl holding a balloon skipped past, her eyes fixed on me. "Hi, Ethan." I turned. Do I know you? Her smile widened, too wide for her small face. Everybody knows you. The balloon slipped from her fingers and floated upward. She didn't chase it. She just kept staring. That's when the church bells rang. Not once, not twice, but 13 times. The sound rolled through the streets like thunder, vibrating in my bones. The townsfolk stepped outside their homes, shops, and porches, all at once, all turning toward me. Their smiles were frozen, identical. The woman from the porch earlier raised her hand. "Welcome back, Ethan." The man from the corner store echoed her. "Welcome back, Ethan." Voices layered together until the entire town was chanting my name. "Welcome back, Ethan. Welcome back, Ethan. Welcome back." My vision swam. My knees buckled. Then someone whispered behind me, close enough that I felt the breath on my ear. "Don't let them take your memories." I spun around. No one was there. The crowd kept chanting. My chest tightened, and in that moment, I realized something with icy clarity. I hadn't told a single person here my name. And yet, they all knew. The chanting should have sounded ridiculous, but it didn't. It was suffocating. 100 voices, rising and falling in unison, echoing my name like it was part of some sacred ritual. "Welcome back, Ethan." The words drilled into me with each repetition, stealing air from my lungs. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the wooden post of the bulletin board. For a moment, all I could do was clutch my chest, terrified that if I let go, my heart would burst through my ribs. I scanned the crowd, desperate for any crack in their expressions, any hint that this was some sick joke. But their faces were fixed, eyes bright, smiles locked in eerie harmony. Not one person blinked. Not one person hesitated. And beneath that grotesque display of warmth, I felt something colder, something hungry. Then the whisper came again, though softer this time, carried on the wind like a thread of smoke. "Don't let them take your memories." My head snapped toward the sound, searching desperately, but the crowd pressed closer, their bodies forming a wall of familiarity that felt more like a cage. That's when I saw him. At the edge of the square, half hidden in the shadow of the church steeple, a man stood apart. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't chanting. His face was pale, drawn, his eyes hollow with something that looked a lot like recognition. He raised a single finger to his lips, signaling silence, then slipped into the narrow alley beside the church. Without thinking, I moved. The crowd didn't stop me. They didn't even react. Their eyes followed, their mouths still shaping the chant, but their bodies parted like water as I pushed through. My legs trembled with each step, but some instinct told me that if I stayed among them any longer, I'd forget how to move at all. The alley smelled of damp stone and old smoke. My footsteps echoed against brick walls that seemed to close in tighter the farther I went. Ahead, the man waited, half hidden in the shadows, his posture stiff as though he'd been waiting for me longer than I could imagine. "Who are you?" I demanded, though my voice cracked on the last word. He looked over his shoulder, then back at me, his eyes darting nervously toward the street we'd just left. "Keep your voice down. They'll hear." "Who will?" "Them." He cut me off sharply. "The townsfolk. They're not what they seem." I swallowed hard. "No kidding. They all know my name. They know things about me they shouldn't. What the hell is this place?" The man's lips tightened, and for a moment he looked older than his body could contain, like someone frayed at the edges. "Harrowick doesn't let people leave once it chooses them. You've been marked, Ethan. The moment you walked past that sign, you belonged to them." A chill shot down my spine. "No, that's insane. I don't belong here. I just broke down on the highway, You don't remember, do you?" His voice dropped lower, heavy with pity. "That's how it starts." I shook my head violently. "No. I remember everything. My name, my car, where I live. But even as I said it, a strange unease crawled across my mind. The details felt slippery. My apartment building, I could picture the hallway, the door, but the number on it blurred when I tried to focus. What floor was it on? 3rd? 4th? Suddenly, I couldn't be sure. I staggered back a step. No, that's not possible. The man's hand clamped down on my shoulder. His grip was stronger than it looked, desperate, almost painful. Listen to me, Ethan. They'll take your memories one by one. First the small ones. The name of a street, a birthday, a phone number. Then bigger pieces, faces of people you love, whole years. They'll strip you down until the only thing left is what they decide you should be. My mouth went dry. I wanted to laugh, to deny it, to accuse him of spinning ghost stories in a haunted alley. But that blur in my memory, the apartment door number, felt like the first thread pulling loose from a sweater. And once it started unraveling, I didn't know if I could stop it. What do they want from me? I whispered. The man's eyes darkened. The same thing they want from all of us. To belong. To keep the town alive. Harrowick feeds on identity. It swallows who you were and makes you part of it. That's why they all know your name, Ethan. Because it's not just yours anymore. It's theirs. I felt dizzy, the ground beneath me tilting like a ship in storm. My breath came in shallow gasps. You're saying, they'll erase me? Not erase, he murmured. Rewrite. For a long, agonizing moment, the silence of the alley pressed down on us, broken only by the distant hum of voices still chanting my name in the square. Then, as if on cue, the church bells tolled again. Once. Twice. A hollow, metallic sound that rattled my bones. The man's head snapped up, eyes wide. They've noticed you're gone. A shadow fell across the mouth of the alley. Figures appeared, 3 of them, stepping slowly into the narrow space. Their smiles gleamed white in the dim light, their eyes fixed squarely on me. Ethan, one of them called, her voice syrup-sweet. Where are you going? You don't need to hide. The man gripped my arm. Run. I didn't think. I just obeyed. We sprinted deeper into the alley, our footsteps pounding against stone. The walls seemed to stretch, bending impossibly, twisting into angles that shouldn't exist. Behind us, the voices followed, calm, patient, certain. You can't run from home, Ethan. You'll come back. You always do. My chest burned as we rounded a corner, plunging into deeper shadow. I glanced back, but the figures weren't chasing. They didn't need to. They just stood at the alley's entrance, watching, smiling, as though they knew something I didn't. As though they knew that no matter how far I ran, Harrowick would always be waiting. We didn't stop running until the alley spat us out behind a row of crumbling warehouses at the far edge of town. My chest heaved like it might cave in, every breath scraping my throat raw. The man finally slowed, leaning against a rusted door with peeling blue paint. He bent forward, hands on his knees, sweat dripping from his brow, though his eyes kept flicking nervously to the streets behind us. I wanted to collapse, but fear kept my legs locked beneath me. What the hell was that? Who are you? My voice cracked, higher than I wanted it to sound, and I hated the way it made me seem as fragile as I felt. The man straightened slowly, brushing dust from his sleeves. He looked older now that I saw him clearly, though not in years, more in wear, as though Harrowick itself had wrung him dry and kept him alive out of spite. Deep creases lined his face, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were the kind you see in survivors of disasters, people who've stared into something no human should and somehow crawled back. My name doesn't matter, he said quietly. His voice was hoarse, stripped of anything resembling warmth. Names are dangerous here. The more you speak it, the more the town knows. And once Harrowick knows, it doesn't let go. I swallowed hard, shaking my head. You keep saying the town like it's alive. His gaze met mine, unwavering. It is. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came. The words died in my throat because, deep down, a small part of me already believed him. I'd seen too much, heard the crowd chanting, seen the bulletin board with my face on it, felt the weight of 100 eyes that knew me better than I knew myself. No small-town gossip could explain that. Then what do I do? My voice felt small, like I was a child asking for directions in the dark. How do I get out? He laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. Out? You think there's an out? That's the first thing it takes from you, hope. He leaned back against the warehouse wall, sliding down until he sat in the dirt, staring off at nothing. But there are rules. You follow them, maybe you last longer. Maybe. I crouched beside him, every nerve screaming that I shouldn't trust a stranger, but he was all I had. Rules? What rules? He lifted a trembling hand, ticking them off one by one. First rule, don't eat too much. The food tastes like yours, doesn't it? Exactly how you like it. That's because it is yours. Every bite is a memory. The more you eat, the faster you forget. His eyes flicked to me knowingly. You already had some at Millie's, didn't you? The eggs. The hash browns. My stomach lurched, the taste of ash returning with brutal force. Second rule, he continued, his voice lower now, urgent. Don't look too long into the mirrors. They'll show you what you were, but also what the town wants you to be. You stare long enough, and you won't remember which face is yours anymore. The image of the little girl with the balloon flashed in my mind, her too-wide smile, her unblinking stare. I shuddered. Third rule, he said, pausing like it hurt to say the words. Never, under any circumstance, answer when they call you after midnight. That's when the town whispers. That's when it tests how much of you it has already taken. His face hardened. If you answer, you're theirs. I sat back on my heels, the dirt biting into my palms. Rules. Always rules in places like this. Stories, warnings, half-superstitions. But the way he spoke them didn't feel like warnings, it felt like confessions, carved into his bones by suffering. And what happens if you break them? I asked. His eyes slid shut, as if trying to erase memories he couldn't bear to see. Then you end up like the others. Others? He opened his eyes again, and the emptiness inside them chilled me more than the chanting crowd had. You'll know them when you see them. For a long moment, silence sat heavy between us, broken only by the distant creak of something metallic swaying in the wind. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling smaller than I ever had. I can't stay here, I whispered, almost to myself. I have a life. I have people waiting for me. The man tilted his head, studying me like I'd said something naive. Do you? I stiffened. Of course I do. My apartment, my job. But when I reached for the image of my job, my desk, my coworkers, the building itself, it blurred like fog. I tried harder, chasing the memory, but the harder I chased, the faster it slipped away. A name surfaced, Mark, my coworker. Or was it Matt? I couldn't see his face. Couldn't hear his voice. Couldn't even remember if he was real. Panic clawed my chest, sharp and merciless. No, I muttered, pressing my hands against my temples. No, I had a job. I do. The man just watched, grim and unsurprised. That's how it starts, he said softly. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but sit here while pieces of me frayed away like threads in a fire. But the fear locked me in place. I didn't know what to cling to anymore, what was real and what Harrowick had already rewritten. The man shifted, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. "You should rest. You'll need strength." "Strength for what?" I asked, my voice raw. His eyes narrowed toward the horizon, where the sun was sinking behind the rooftops, bleeding the sky into shades of rust and bruised purple. "For nightfall. That's when Harrowick wakes." The words froze in the air between us. My heart stuttered, then raced, each beat hammering like a warning bell. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, the first streetlight flickered to life. And from somewhere deep in the town, carried faint but clear on the cooling night air, I heard it. A voice. Calling my name. "Ethan." The sound of my name floated through the twilight like a thread pulled from the dark, soft, fragile, but sharp enough to slice through every thought in my head. "Ethan." My pulse kicked hard, as though my heart had just realized something my mind refused to accept. The voice didn't come from the man beside me. It didn't come from anywhere visible at all. It seemed to come from the town itself, from the cracks between houses, from the swaying of the power lines, from the shadows collecting at the edges of the street. "Don't answer," the man hissed. His face was pale, drained of every drop of color. His eyes flicked wildly, like an animal scenting a predator. "Whatever you do, don't you dare answer." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The voice called again, this time clearer, closer. "Ethan." It wasn't menacing, not in the way a growl or a shout would be. No, it was worse. It was familiar. Intimate. The way someone you love might call you in the middle of the night, their voice soft with trust. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, grounding myself. The man's warnings rattled in my head, "Don't answer after midnight." But it wasn't midnight yet, was it? The last smear of red still clung to the horizon, though the streetlights hummed weakly as if they knew the sun was no longer theirs to depend on. I almost whispered back without thinking. My lips parted, the shape of my name foaming on my tongue. That's when the man grabbed my wrist with a strength that startled me. His grip was like iron. "Don't," he growled, low and sharp. "That's how it gets in." The voice came again, louder now, echoing down the street like it was moving toward us. "Ethan, come back inside. It's getting late. You'll catch cold." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just any voice, it was my mother's. The exact tone she used when I was a boy, calling me inside after dusk while I kicked a ball in the yard. I hadn't heard it in years, not since my breath caught. Not since before she died. I wrenched my wrist free from the man's grip, my eyes searching the dark. It's not her," he snapped, his words cutting like a whip. "It's never them. It uses what you love, what you've lost. That's how it hooks you. That's how it eats." But my mind rebelled. My chest ached with something sharper than fear, longing. The voice came again, softer now, coaxing, warm. "Ethan, sweetheart. Just come here. Don't be afraid. I'll take care of you." Tears burned my eyes before I realized I was crying. I didn't even remember standing, but suddenly my feet were moving toward the sound, drawn like iron to a magnet. My mother's voice, how could I not follow? She was gone forever, but here she was. Alive. Calling me. The man lunged, blocking my path. He shoved me hard against the warehouse wall. "Look at me," he barked. His voice cracked, not with anger, but desperation. "It's not her, Ethan. It's the town. It's Harrowick." I blinked at him, breath ragged, chest heaving. But over his shoulder, I swore I saw her. Just at the far end of the street, beneath the orange flicker of a failing lamp, my mother. Her silhouette soft, familiar, her arms open wide. "Ethan," she whispered, and this time, I didn't just hear it, I felt it, vibrating in my bones. My knees buckled. I can't. The man slapped me, hard enough to snap my head sideways. Pain bloomed across my cheek, shocking me back into the present. You'll lose yourself, he hissed, inches from my face. You answer that voice, you're done. You won't remember her, or yourself, or anything else. You'll be nothing but one of them. I pressed a shaking hand to my face, hot tears mixing with the sting of his blow. My mother's figure still lingered under the streetlight, but something about it had changed. The arms no longer looked open, they looked too long. The shadows beneath her seemed to writhe. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, the motion jerky, puppet-like. And then she smiled. Not the soft smile I remembered. This was too wide, too sharp. My stomach twisted violently as I realized her teeth were too many, rows upon rows glinting in the lamplight. The illusion shattered. A sound rose from her throat, something between a laugh and a scream, and her body collapsed into shadow, spilling across the pavement like oil before vanishing entirely. I collapsed to my knees, gasping, the reality crashing over me like ice water. The man crouched beside me, gripping my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. His eyes burned with an intensity that was almost worse than the horror I'd just seen. Do you understand now? He demanded. Do you understand what you're dealing with? I nodded, though my body shook so hard it felt like my bones might rattle apart. He let go, leaning back with a weary sigh. That was only the beginning. Nightfall hasn't even truly come yet. The sky was darker now, the last colors bled away, leaving only the cold wash of moonlight and the sickly glow of the street lamps. The town had changed again in the span of moments. Windows that had been dark before now glowed faintly, as though lit from inside by fires too far away to reach. Shadows stretched wrong across the pavement, bending in ways that didn't follow the light. In the silence, it was thicker than before, heavy, as if the whole town were holding its breath, waiting for me to speak again. I hugged myself, rocking slightly, trying to ground myself with the rhythm of my own movement. I can't stay here, I whispered. I'll go insane. The man's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Insanity comes quick in Harrowick. But survival? That's slower. And much, much crueler. The wind shifted, carrying with it a low hum. At first, I thought it was the power lines buzzing, but then it deepened into something almost human, like a chorus murmuring just out of earshot. I turned, scanning the dark, and my blood turned to ice. Across the street, in front of the boarded-up florist, 3 figures stood. Motionless. Watching. Their faces were pale, too pale, drained of everything but those wide, impossible smiles. They didn't speak, but I knew exactly what they were thinking. You'll come back. You always do. The man touched my arm lightly, and for the first time, his voice carried something close to fear. Stay close. They've noticed you. They stood across the street like broken mannequins, 3 pale figures in the moonlight. The air around them seemed denser, heavier, as if their very presence pressed down on the atmosphere. Their faces were stretched into smiles that didn't falter, didn't blink, didn't move, as though joy had been carved into them with a knife. But their eyes were voids. Not black, not empty, but voids in the truest sense, holes punched into the fabric of the world, sucking in every ounce of warmth I had left. I couldn't look away. Something about their stillness pulled at me. My brain wanted to label them as human, neighbors, townsfolk, familiar faces in a crowd, but my body rebelled. Every nerve screamed predator, danger, wrong. My legs trembled with the urge to run, though my muscles felt heavy, unwilling, like I was sinking into the pavement. Beside me, the man's hand gripped my arm tightly. His voice was barely a whisper. Don't look at them too long. They'll notice when you notice. I tore my gaze away with effort, my chest burning as if I'd been holding my breath. What are they? His jaw tightened. The ones who forgot. People who came here, just like you, and lost themselves piece by piece. They didn't follow the rules. They gave in to the voices, the food, the faces in the mirrors. Now they're shells. The town wears them like skin, parading them around to remind the rest of us what's waiting if we slip. My stomach churned violently. People who came here. That meant there were more. Dozens? Hundreds? How many lives had Harrowick stolen? How many families had wondered why their loved ones never came home, never realizing they'd been swallowed whole by a town that fed on names and memories? The three figures shifted in unison, like puppets tugged by invisible strings. Slowly, deliberately, they turned their heads toward us. The smiles widened by a fraction, just enough to reveal teeth, too many teeth, gleaming faintly in the streetlight. My heart stuttered, every beat like a hammer striking against brittle glass. "Don't run," the man whispered, though his voice trembled. "Running makes them chase. Just walk. Casual. Like you belong here." The word belong struck me like a blade. That was the lie this place whispered, wasn't it? That I belonged. That I was home. Every fiber of my being screamed that I didn't, but my fraying memory betrayed me. For half a second, I thought, maybe I had been here before. Maybe I was one of them, coming back after forgetting. The thought sent a jolt of cold terror through me, because I couldn't immediately prove it wrong. The man tugged me forward, and I forced my legs to move, each step heavy and deliberate. My mouth was dry, my breath shallow. I kept my eyes locked on the cracked sidewalk, refusing to meet those void-like eyes again. The humming sound from before deepened, filling the air with vibrations that rattled in my bones. It was coming from them. "They're singing," the man muttered, almost to himself. "God help us, they're singing tonight." The sound wasn't music, not really. It was a droning, wordless hymn, rising and falling like the groan of a dying animal. Yet buried in the noise was something disturbingly familiar. I thought I heard my name stretched thin across their voices. Then, worse, I thought I heard laughter. My laughter. The sound of me chuckling at some forgotten joke, woven into the droning chorus like a thread of recognition. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't in my ears. It was inside me, vibrating against the walls of my skull. The man pulled me harder, steering us down another alley, narrower than the last. The darkness pressed close, the smell of mold and rot choking the air. Still, the humming followed, distant but constant, like it had settled under my skin. When we finally stopped, both of us gasping, I pressed my back against the damp wall, trying to steady my thoughts. What happens to them?" I asked. My voice shook so badly I barely recognized it as mine. The man didn't answer right away. His face was grim, eyes fixed on the ground as if he couldn't bear to look at me. "They forget themselves completely. Everything. Their families, their lives, even their own names. When the last memory is gone, Harrowick fills the void. It gives them new ones, ones that belong to the town. That's what you saw back there. Not people anymore. Just masks the town wears." The alley seemed to shrink around me. "And, if that happens to me?" He finally looked up, his expression hard. "Then you'll stand in the street one night, smiling that smile, singing that song, waiting for the next poor bastard who wanders in. And you won't even remember you were anything else." My stomach dropped into an endless pit. I doubled over, retching dryly, though nothing came up. My body rejected the idea with violent spasms, as though throwing up could purge the terror now lodged in my gut. The man crouched beside me, his voice low but firm. "That's why you have to fight. Every second. Hold on to what you know, even as it slips. Write it down if you can. Carve it into your skin if you have to. Because once it's gone, it's not coming back." I nodded weakly, wiping my mouth with a trembling hand. His words settled in my mind like nails hammered into rotting wood. Hold on to what you know. But even as I tried, I realized something horrifying. I couldn't remember my father's face. Not his voice. Not his laugh. Not the way his hand felt on my shoulder when he used to ruffle my hair. The image blurred like static every time I reached for it, dissolving into nothing. I squeezed my temples, clawing at the memory, but the harder I pulled, the faster it slipped away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch the walls until my fists shattered. Instead, I whispered, broken and small, "It's happening already." The man's hand tightened on my shoulder. Then we moved faster. A sound drifted through the alley, the faint, rhythmic slap of footsteps. Not rushing. Not stumbling. Steady. Purposeful. My skin prickled, every hair rising. The man's eyes widened. "They followed us," he said. I turned my head slowly, dread crawling through me like ice water. At the far end of the alley, the three figures stood again. Motionless. Smiling. Their heads tilted in perfect unison, their teeth gleaming in the dark. The man shoved me forward, urgency breaking his voice. "Run now, Ethan. Don't stop this time. Run like hell." We ran like hunted animals, our footsteps pounding against the cracked pavement, echoing through the deserted streets. I could hear them behind us, not the frantic pursuit I expected, but that steady rhythm, a mockery of a chase, as though they already knew where we'd end up. My chest ached, every breath tearing at my lungs, but I didn't dare slow. The man's grip on my arm was iron, pulling me around corners, weaving through alleys, until the town blurred into a dizzying labyrinth of shadows and crooked houses. Finally, he dragged me toward a sagging, two-story building that looked as though it had been abandoned decades ago. The windows were boarded haphazardly, the porch sagged beneath its own weight, and weeds strangled the foundation like green ropes. The door gave way with a groan that seemed too loud, too alive. We stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind us, and the silence that followed was almost worse than the sound of pursuit. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint metallic tang of rust. Cobwebs draped across the corners like funeral veils, and the wallpaper peeled in strips that curled downward like dead skin. The boards over the windows let in only slivers of moonlight, casting long, skeletal shadows across the warped floor. Yet, despite the decay, the house didn't feel abandoned. The silence had weight, and I could almost sense something in the walls, listening, waiting. The man leaned against the door, panting. "This place buys us time. Not much, but enough." I swallowed hard, trying to calm my ragged breaths. "What is this place?" He hesitated before answering, his eyes flicking toward the staircase that loomed in the center of the hall. "They call it the House of Lost Names. It's where the town stores what it takes. Memories. Pieces of people. The ones who don't make it." His voice trailed off, and he shook his head. "You'll see." A chill slid down my spine. I didn't want to see. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but where would I go? The figures outside were patient, relentless. If what he said was true, they'd wait until I slipped, until I lost myself. At least in here, I had walls around me. Thin, rotten walls, but walls all the same. We crept deeper into the house, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of dust. Every creak of the floorboards echoed too loudly, as though the house itself was alerting something of our presence. The smell grew worse the further we went, mildew, rot, and underneath it, a faint sweetness that turned my stomach, like fruit left to spoil in the sun. The hallway opened into a living room. A long, cracked mirror hung above the fireplace, its surface fogged with grime. For a moment, I thought it was too dirty to reflect, but when I stepped closer, my own face stared back at me. Only, it wasn't mine. The man caught my arm before I could recoil. "Don't look." His voice was sharp, almost panicked. He yanked me away, turning me toward the center of the room. "That's how it gets inside you faster. Reflections aren't yours anymore. Not here. I wanted to argue, but the words died on my tongue. In the brief glimpse I'd caught, my reflection hadn't been entirely wrong. The eyes, the mouth, they were mine, but blurred, like an old photograph left in the rain. And the expression was all wrong. It smiled faintly, knowingly, as though it recognized something I didn't. We sat in the center of the room, the man pulling a half-burned candle from his coat pocket. He lit it with trembling hands, the flickering flame casting weak light across the room. "They don't come in here," he muttered. "Not directly. But the house will show you things. Test you. You have to ignore it. You understand? Ignore it, no matter how real it seems." I nodded, though my heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. For the first time, his expression softened, though it carried a deep sorrow. "Because someone once helped me. Not enough to save me, but enough to delay the inevitable." I figured, maybe if I pass that forward, there's a chance someone gets out. "Maybe you." His words twisted in my chest. "You mean, you're already?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence that followed said enough. His voice trembled sometimes when he spoke my name, like he was testing if he still remembered it. His eyes flickered too long on familiar objects, as if trying to recall what they were. He was already unraveling, strand by strand, holding on to himself by sheer willpower. Before I could say more, a sound drifted through the house. Not from outside, but from upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. The boards groaned with each one, steady and unhurried. I froze. "They said they don't come in here." "They don't." His voice was low, tight. "That isn't them." The footsteps grew louder, closer. My mouth went dry, and I clutched my knees to stop them from shaking. "Then what the hell is it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stood slowly, motioning for me to stay put. The candle flame wavered as if it sensed the tension, shadows dancing erratically across the walls. The sound reached the top of the staircase. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Then a voice floated down, soft, broken, achingly familiar. "Ethan? Is that you?" My breath caught in my throat. My mother's voice. Gentle, warm, carrying the same lilt I'd heard countless times as a child. The voice that used to call me in for dinner, the voice that soothed my nightmares. I shot to my feet before I realized what I was doing. "Mom?" The man spun toward me, his face pale. "No. It isn't her. Don't answer." But my legs moved on their own. The voice was so real, so right. "Ethan," it called again, trembling with relief. "I've been looking for you, sweetheart. Come upstairs. Please." Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't even realized how desperately I craved that voice, how much I wanted to hear it again. I took a step toward the staircase. The man grabbed me, his grip bruising. His eyes burned with urgency. "It's not her. Don't give it your name." I blinked at him, dazed. "What?" He shook me hard enough to rattle my teeth. "That's how it starts. You answer, and the house takes another piece of you. That's what it feeds on. Don't say your name. Don't even think it too loud." The voice called again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Ethan, don't you want to come home?" The candle sputtered violently, and for a split second, I swore I saw shapes moving in the shadows, figures lined along the walls, faceless, whispering. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, fighting the pull of her voice. My chest ached with the effort of denial. The man shook me again, shouting over the sound. "Remember who you are. Hold on to it. Don't let this house take it from you." But even as he shouted, I felt it slipping again. A memory, me at 12 years old, riding my bike down a summer street, my mother waving from the porch. Her smile, her laugh, the scent of lilacs in the air, it all blurred, colors running together like wet paint. When I opened my eyes, the shadow of the staircase loomed longer, deeper, and the voice called once more. Only this time, it wasn't my mother. It was me. "Ethan," it said in my own voice, smooth and coaxing. "Come upstairs. I know who you are." The man's face drained of color, and the candle went out, plunging the house into suffocating darkness. The moment the candle died, the darkness wasn't merely absence of light, it was presence. It pressed against my skin, thick and smothering, as though the air itself had turned into velvet tar. I couldn't see the man anymore, couldn't see the walls, but I felt them crowding closer, shifting like lungs drawing breath. Every instinct screamed that I was not alone, that dozens, no, hundreds, of unseen eyes were open in that blackness, staring, unblinking, waiting. The voice that had called to me lingered, softer now, curling through the dark like smoke. "I know who you are." It was my voice, but drawn out, stretched, the syllables dripping with something not human. It was how I might sound if I had lived for centuries, if my words had been soaked in rot and time. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it made no difference, the sound vibrated from the walls, from the floorboards, from within my chest. The man's hand found my shoulder in the dark, startling me. His grip was firm, grounding. "Don't speak. Don't move," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "The house is listening." And then I heard it. Not footsteps, not voices, scratching. A faint, endless scratch, like nails dragged against plaster. At first it came from above, then from below, then from every direction at once. The walls whispered with it, a dry rustle like parchment being torn. Slowly, the sound resolved into words. Names. Whispered over and over, layered, thousands of them. Male, female, young, old, repeating like a grotesque litany. Some spoken with reverence, some with mockery, others wept. My ears strained involuntarily. Into my horror, I began to recognize them. Names of people I once knew, a childhood friend, a teacher, a neighbor whose face had faded from memory. Their names slipped from the walls like they'd been stolen long ago, preserved in this place. And then, my own. Ethan. It came again and again, in a thousand voices, angry, loving, broken, joyous. The sound burrowed into my skull, repeating my name until it no longer felt like mine, until the syllables broke apart into meaningless fragments. E-E-T-H-N. Ethan. Anton. Each version chipped away at the familiarity until I felt hollow inside, like the word was peeling my identity away layer by layer. I staggered back, clutching at my ears, though I knew it was useless. "Make it stop," I whispered, forgetting myself. The man spun toward me, his voice harsh, furious. "Never speak in this house." His hands shook as he grabbed my collar, shaking me. "Do you understand what you've done? You just fed it." The walls groaned, and for the first time, I realized the scratching wasn't just sounds, it was writing. Thin, pale lines etched themselves across the wallpaper, glowing faintly in the dark. I stumbled closer, unable to stop myself, my eyes tracing the jagged scrawl. Names. Endless names carved into the walls, floor, ceiling. Some I recognized, most I didn't. Each one shimmered faintly, as though it had been burned into the fabric of the house itself. My throat closed as I saw my own, Ethan Cole, newly written, the letters still glowing like fresh embers. The man cursed under his breath. "It's claimed you now. You'll start forgetting faster." I reached out, trembling, my fingers hovering inches from the glowing letters. The closer I got, the colder the air grew, until frost rimed the tips of my nails. When I finally touched it, pain lanced up my arm, sharp and searing, like plunging my hand into ice and fire at once. Suddenly, images burst behind my eyes, fragments of memory not my own. A woman screaming into the dark. A boy standing at the edge of a field, calling for his dog. A man weeping as he carved his name into wood, whispering it over and over so he wouldn't lose it. All of them gone now, but the house still remembered. The house remembered everything. I tore my hand away, gasping, clutching my wrist as though it might fall off. Why does it keep them? The man's face was pale, drawn tight with fear. Because memory is power. Because identity is life. Every name it holds makes the town stronger, makes the walls thicker, makes the lies sweeter. You think you're still yourself, but you're not. You're already being rewritten. I wanted to argue, but my mouth opened and nothing came. My mind reached for something simple, my father's middle name, but it was gone. Not blurred, not faded. Gone. As though it had never existed. My body trembled violently, and my knees nearly gave out. The scratching grew louder, manic, as if the walls were laughing. More names etched themselves into the plaster around us, spiraling outward, covering every inch of space. One appeared right beside my glowing name, burning with fresh light. I leaned in, heart stuttering. The man's name. I whispered it before I realized I had. His head snapped toward me, fury and terror mingling in his eyes. Don't ever speak it out loud. Don't you understand? If you say it, if you feed it, it becomes theirs too. But the damage was done. The letters brightened, sinking deeper into the wall as though absorbed. The scratching ceased abruptly, replaced by silence so deep it roared in my ears. Then, slowly, something else began. A knock. Soft, deliberate. From within the walls themselves. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then the voice returned, not my mother's, not mine, but his. The man's own voice, calling from behind the plaster. Pleading. Begging. Help me. Let me out. Please. I stared at him in horror. He shook his head violently, pressing his palms to his ears. That isn't me. Don't listen. Don't believe it. His voice cracked, brittle with fear. That's what happens once your name is written. The house makes another you. One that belongs to it. The knocking grew louder, more desperate, shaking dust from the ceiling. The voice sharpened, splintering with rage. Why did you give me to them, Ethan? Why? My name again. My name on its lips. My knees buckled, the weight of guilt crashing down even though I hadn't meant to do it. The house had tricked me, used me, to bind him. The man grabbed me by the shoulders, his eyes blazing. Don't let it win. Don't let it turn us against each other. Do you hear me? We have to get out before it takes more. But the walls were already shifting. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, and through them, pale fingers began to push, clawing toward us. The man shoved me toward the door, his voice hoarse with panic. Run! I staggered forward, my hand brushing the frame, only to find another name carved into it, glowing faintly. My blood ran cold. It was mine again. Only this time, the letters weren't Ethan Cole. They were something else entirely. Something I didn't recognize. Something that felt like it had never belonged to me at all. We burst through the warped door of the House of Lost Names like drowning men clawing to the surface. The night air was no relief, it was colder than before, damp with mist that clung to my skin like a second layer. My lungs burned as I tried to suck it in, but even breathing felt wrong here, as if the air itself carried whispers, pressing against my eardrums with words I couldn't quite make out. Behind us, the house groaned as though disappointed, the scratching fading into silence. I didn't dare look back. The man didn't slow. He pulled me down the narrow street, his pace frantic, his eyes darting to every shadow. The town was alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. Curtains swayed in windows where no breeze stirred. Doors creaked as though someone had just slipped inside. From somewhere distant came the faint toll of a bell, deep and resonant, vibrating through my bones like a summons. "We're too late," the man muttered, his voice ragged. "The festival's begun." I stumbled after him. "Festival? What do you mean?" He didn't answer immediately. His silence was worse than words, a silence steeped in dread. Finally, as we turned a corner, he said flatly, "It's the night they celebrate the ones they've taken. When the town parades its trophies." The street ahead widened into what must have once been a town square. I froze at the sight. Every building glowed with lantern light, not warm, but sickly, casting hues of pale yellow and green that made the world look diseased. Banners hung across the square, stitched from mismatched fabrics, some so old they looked like funeral shrouds. In the center, a bonfire roared, flames leaping unnaturally high, sparks spiraling upward like fireflies caught in a storm. And they were there. The people. Dozens, no, hundreds, filling the square. Some danced in jerky, puppet-like motions, others stood motionless, smiling with those carved, two-eyed grins. Every one of them turned as we arrived, their heads swiveling in unison, their eyes gleaming with recognition. "Ethan," they said. Not shouted, not whispered, spoken all at once in a chorus that made my stomach turn. My knees buckled under the weight of it. They all knew me. They all had always known me. At the edges of the firelight stood the others, the hollow ones, like the figures I had seen before. Their faces stretched in rictus smiles, their void black eyes unblinking. They swayed gently, humming that dreadful, droning song that seemed to come from the marrow of the earth itself. The sound set my teeth on edge, vibrating through my skull until I thought it would crack open. "What do we do?" I hissed, but the man's face was grim, pale in the flickering light. "There's no hiding now," he said. "The festival demands an offering." Before I could ask what that meant, the crowd parted. A procession emerged, slow and deliberate. At its head was a tall figure draped in robes stitched from scraps of clothing, shirts, dresses, children's pajamas, each one stained, frayed, torn. The figure's face was covered by a mask that looked as though it had been carved from wood, yet it pulsed faintly as if it were alive. The mask was a grotesque patchwork of features, one blue glass eye, one painted, one empty hole, lips too large, stretched into a smile, and beneath it, faintly visible, more lips, moving. The figure raised its hand, and the crowd fell silent. Even the humming ceased. Only the crackle of the fire remained. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice neither male nor female, but a composite of many tones woven together. "Welcome home, Ethan." My stomach dropped. My legs threatened to give out. I wanted to scream that I wasn't home, that I didn't belong here, but my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The figure gestured toward the bonfire. The flames shifted, and for a moment, I saw shapes writhing within them, faces, hundreds of them, screaming silently. Their features flickered in and out, as though the fire burned with the essence of people long lost. My breath caught as one of the faces turned, and I swore it was mine. The man beside me squeezed my arm, grounding me. His voice was harsh, a whisper meant only for me. "Don't let them draw you in. That fire burns memory. If you step closer, it'll strip you down until there's nothing left." But the crowd began to chant, low and rhythmic. "Ethan. Ethan. Ethan." The name pulsed through the square like a heartbeat, each repetition stealing a little piece of me. My head swam, my vision blurred, and for an instant I couldn't remember where I was before Harrowick, couldn't remember the road, the car, the life I was supposed to have lived. All that remained was the heat of the fire and the sound of my name, binding me here. The robed figure raised both hands, and the chanting stopped. Its mask tilted toward me. "An offering," it said, and though the voice was calm, it slithered into my skull like worms. "The town must always feed. You have been chosen." I staggered back, panic flooding me. "No, I whispered. I don't belong here. I don't. The crowd murmured, voices overlapping in perfect harmony. You always have. You always will. The man stepped in front of me, defiance burning in his eyes. Take me instead. The figure tilted its head. The mask shifted, subtly, but horribly, as though new features were pressing up from beneath. You are already ours, it said. Your name glows on the wall. You are a lantern to guide him. The man flinched as though struck. His shoulders sagged. He didn't argue. He knew it was true. The figure's gaze, if it could be called that, returned to me. Step forward, it commanded. Give yourself to the fire. Remember nothing. Become everything. The crowd leaned forward as one, their smiles stretching wider, their eyes glinting with hunger. My body trembled. I wanted to run, to fight, to scream, but my legs began to move, carrying me toward the fire against my will. Each step felt heavier, as though invisible hands pressed down on me, pushing me forward. The fire roared louder, faces within it twisting in agony, then in ecstasy, then gone. I felt my name being pulled from me, syllable by syllable, unraveling like thread. Behind me, the man's voice shouted desperately. Hold on to yourself, Ethan. Remember. Anything, your childhood, your father, the sound of your own voice. Don't give them your name. But as I reached the edge of the fire, I realized with bone-deep horror, I couldn't remember my father's name anymore. Or his face. Or my own birthday. The crowd chanted louder. Ethan. 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 And then the flames surged higher, swallowing the night sky. The flames rose higher, licking the night sky with tongues of orange and green, casting warped shadows across the square. The crowd pressed in tighter, their smiles grotesque in the flickering light, their chanting pounding in my skull. Ethan. 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 Each repetition hollowed me, scraping me raw from the inside out, until my own name no longer sounded like mine. It was just a noise, a sound belonging to them. The rogue figure loomed before me, its patchwork mask shimmering as if alive. The stitched lips flexed, revealing teeth beneath the wood, teeth that shifted too quickly to belong to one mouth. Its many voices merged into one terrible harmony. Step into the fire. Become more than yourself. Join the forever. I shook my head violently, though my legs quivered on the edge of surrender. I'm not yours. I don't belong here. The crowd hissed collectively, a sound like wind whistling through broken bones. The figure raised its hand, silencing them with effortless command. Then it tilted its mask toward me, as though regarding me with pity. You already are ours, Ethan. You always have been. You just don't remember yet. My body trembled as memories, or something like them, flickered across my mind. A childhood spent not on sunny streets but in shadowed ones. A family I couldn't picture clearly, their faces blurred but their voices echoing faintly with the same chant, Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. Were these real, or were they being poured into me by Harrowick, rewriting my life while I stood powerless? I couldn't tell anymore. The man grabbed my arm, pulling me back from the edge of the fire. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Don't listen. That's how they break you. It's all lies. None of it is yours unless you give it power. The figure's mask shifted again, its features rippling. When it spoke, its voice was no longer a composite, it was his. Perfectly. You know he's lying to you, Ethan. He gave you to us the moment he let your name be written on the wall. He already belongs here. He's nothing more than a hollow shell guiding you to the flame. The man flinched, his grip faltering. For a split second, I saw doubt in his eyes, as though even he couldn't deny the truth. His voice cracked. Don't believe it. I'm still me. I'm still fighting. The crowd laughed as one, a sound that rattled the glass in the windows around the square. The fire surged higher, illuminating the man's face, and I realized how gaunt he had become. His eyes were too wide, his smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as though straining to break free. He was unraveling, just as the figure had said. The mask leaned closer to me, its wooden lips bending into an impossible grin. The town does not demand both of you tonight. Only one. Step into the fire, Ethan, and he may walk free. His name will fade slower. His end will be gentle. My stomach dropped. The choice was a blade pressed against my throat. The man shook me roughly, forcing my eyes back to his. No. Don't you dare. Don't give them what they want. If you burn, it won't free me, it'll only bind you. That's the lie. That's the trap. But his voice faltered, softer now. Still, if one of us has to go, maybe it should be me. I've already lost too much. You still have something left. You can still fight. My heart hammered. The fire roared louder, and in its flames I saw my own face again, smiling, serene, as though already consumed. Behind me, the crowd's chanting grew frenzied. Ethan. 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 The mask stretched closer, its voice curling into my ear like smoke. Choose. The fire or the hollow. One must be given. The man's hands shook as he held on to me. His eyes burned with both fear and a strange kind of acceptance. Don't let them take you, Ethan. Please. If you have to damn someone, damn me. I'm already halfway there. The crowd surged, pressing closer, their eyes wide, their teeth bared in anticipation. Their hunger was palpable, a living thing. The bonfire crackled hungrily, the faces in its flames screaming silently for more. I stood paralyzed between them, the fire that promised to erase me and the man who had kept me alive this long, though his own soul was nearly gone. My thoughts blurred, my name slipping further with every passing second. I clung to what little remained, a boy on a bicycle, my mother's laughter, the smell of summer rain. They flickered like candle flames in a storm, threatening to snuff out. The mask's voices rose in unison, thunderous and final. Choose. And in that instant, I knew I couldn't delay. If I hesitated any longer, the town would decide for me. The fire surged. The man's grip tightened. I opened my mouth. My mouth opened, and for a moment no sound came out. The fire roared, the chanting shook the air, and the man's hand burned against my arm like iron. The mask's grin widened, splintering into dozens of grins, its wooden lips stretching farther than a face should stretch. Time fractured around me, every second splintering into 1,000 sharp edges. When the words finally tore out, they didn't feel like mine. They fell heavy into the night like stones breaking water. I choose myself. The crowd erupted, not in horror, but in jubilation. Their voices rose as one, a thunderous cheer that rattled my bones. The man's eyes widened with anguish and disbelief. He shouted something, my name, I think, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the fire. Hands seized me, dozens of them, rough and cold, pressing against my skin, lifting me toward the flames. My legs kicked, my throat raw with screams, but the crowd carried me like an offering, their smiles grotesque in the shifting firelight. The mask stepped aside, bowing its head in mock reverence, its many voices murmuring, "Welcome home." The heat struck me first. It wasn't the normal heat of fire, it was memory burning, each lick of flame tearing through a moment of my life. The bicycle. The sound of summer rain. My mother's laughter. Gone, one by one, devoured by the hungry blaze. My body convulsed as each piece of me dissolved into smoke. I screamed again, but the scream was hollow. Not mine. Not anymore. Through the haze, I saw the man shoved to the ground, his face twisted in despair. He clawed at his head, his mouth open in a silent scream, but already his features were slipping. His jaw stretched too wide, his eyes turned glassy, his skin slackened into that dreadful puppet-like stillness. His name was leaving him, pulled thread by thread into the fire with mine. I wanted to reach for him, to anchor us both, but my hands were no longer hands. They were smoke, curling and vanishing into the air. Then the final blow came. As my name burned away, as the last fragments of me dissolved, the fire whispered, not with voices, but with truth. It had never been about choosing who burned. It had never been about me or the man at all. The town wasn't feeding on us, it was feeding on me specifically. Because Ethan wasn't the stranger. Ethan was the town. The fire seared the truth into what remained of me. I had always been here. Every face that greeted me, every stranger who smiled and said my name, they weren't greeting an outsider. They were greeting their master. Their vessel. Their heart. I wasn't trapped in Harrowick. Harrowick was trapped in me. And by burning, I wasn't destroyed. I was reborn. The crowd's chanting shifted, rising into a terrible crescendo. They weren't chanting my name anymore, they were chanting the town's. They were chanting Harrowick. The man's voice broke through one final time, a ragged cry of realization. It was you. It was always you. Then he was gone, swallowed by the tide, his name erased, his shell absorbed. The fire consumed the last of my memory, and with it, the last of my resistance. My screams twisted into laughter, endless, joyous, eternal. I looked out over the crowd through new eyes, and they looked back with worship, devotion, hunger. I raised my hand, and their cheers shook the night sky. Harrowick lived through me. It always had. And tomorrow, when another lost soul wandered in, broken down on the roadside, they would hear the words I had once heard, spoken in voices too familiar to deny. Welcome home, Ethan. We've been waiting.